The next global race may not be about oil. It may be about reliable electricity. And so, Canada is building what may become the closest thing a modern electricity grid has to a permanent battery. Not a battery you plug into the wall, and not a lithium pack sitting beside a solar farm, but a source of steady power that can run through winter, summer, night, windless days, heat waves, political shocks, and rising demand. What Canada is building at Darlington on Lake Ontario is not just an energy project. It is an industrial strategy, an economic signal, and possibly one of the most important moves Canada is making in the global race for the future economy. At the Darlington nuclear site in Ontario, a massive foundation has been placed 35 meters below ground. That foundation is part of the first small modular reactor being built in the G7. This is no longer just a government announcement, a policy document, or a future promise. Concrete and steel are now in the ground, and the reactor building is beginning to rise. That matters because every modern economy faces one basic problem that politicians rarely explain clearly. Electricity must be available at the exact moment people need it. Solar power is useful, but it depends on sunlight. Wind power is useful, but it depends on wind. Hydropower is powerful, but drought can weaken it. Gas plants can respond quickly, but they expose countries to fuel prices, carbon politics, and supply risk. Nuclear power works differently. A nuclear reactor produces steady electricity for long periods. It does not wait for the sun, it does not wait for the wind, and it does not panic when demand rises at night. That is why nuclear can act like the backbone of a modern grid, not because it stores electricity like a battery, but because it provides the stability that batteries are often asked to protect. This is where Canada's permanent battery idea becomes important. In the age of artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, data centers, industrial electrification, and advanced manufacturing, stable electricity may become one of the most valuable assets a country can control. Ontario's latest electricity planning outlook forecasts demand rising by about 65% by 2050. That means more data centers, more electric vehicle plants, more battery factories, more homes, more electrified heating, and more factories asking the grid for power at the same time. The uncomfortable truth is simple. If a country does not control enough reliable electricity, it does not control its industrial future. Factories go where power is stable. Data centers go where power is reliable. Manufacturers go where energy costs can be predicted. Investors go where the lights do not flicker. So Canada's nuclear move is not only about climate policy. It is about keeping future industries inside Canada. It is about making sure the next generation of manufacturing does not move somewhere else because electricity became too expensive, too unstable, or too dependent on outside systems. The reactor being built at Darlington is the BWRX-300, a small modular reactor design selected by Ontario Power Generation. Each unit is designed to produce about 300 megawatts of electricity. OPG's planned fleet of 4 units could eventually produce enough low-carbon power for about 1.2 million homes. But the real story is not only the number of homes. The real story is the type of power. This is power that can run around the clock, support heavy industry, stabilize a grid with more solar and wind, and help Canada compete in a world where electricity is becoming national security. Of course, this project is not cheap, and nuclear should never be discussed as if it has no risks. It is expensive, technically complex, heavily regulated, and politically sensitive. Around the world, nuclear projects have often faced delays, cost overruns, and public resistance. Critics are right to ask hard questions about cost, safety, waste, construction timelines, and whether small modular reactors can deliver at scale. But there is another side to the calculation. The cost of not having enough reliable power can also be enormous. When electricity demand rises and supply cannot keep up, the economy pays through higher prices, lost investment, grid stress, emergency imports, and growing dependence on outside energy systems. That is the trad economics point. Energy is not just an environmental issue. Energy is the foundation of trade. Without power, there is no modern industry. Without industry, there is no strong export base. Without a strong export base, a country becomes dependent on selling raw materials while importing finished goods at higher value. That is how many resource-rich countries remain poor. They export the raw input, someone else processes it, someone else manufactures the final product, someone else captures the profit, and the finished product returns at a higher price. Canada is trying to avoid that trap in the next economy. It has uranium, minerals, engineering capacity, water, space, and a nuclear workforce. The key question is whether it can turn those advantages into a complete industrial system. That is what Darlington represents. A small modular reactor is not just a reactor. It is a supply chain built from steel, concrete, engineering, licensing, construction experience, manufacturing knowledge, safety regulation, skilled labor, and export potential. If Canada proves it can build the first unit and repeat the model, it could sell not only electricity, but expertise. This is why other countries are watching. Small modular reactors promise something traditional mega projects have struggled to deliver: smaller size, repeatable design, factory-built components, and a clearer path to faster deployment. If the first unit works, the second can become easier. If the second becomes easier, the third can become cheaper. If the model becomes reliable, Canada could become a proving ground for a new nuclear export industry. And the timing matters. The world is moving into an electricity-hungry age. Artificial intelligence needs massive power. Cloud computing needs massive power. EV supply chains need massive power. Battery factories need massive power. Critical mineral processing needs massive power. Even the green transition needs massive power. This is the irony many people miss. You cannot build a clean economy without building a much bigger electricity system. You need generation, transmission lines, storage, baseload, skilled workers, capital, and regulation that moves seriously without cutting corners. Canada's wider electricity strategy shows that Darlington is not an isolated project. It is part of a bigger energy reset. Canada is beginning to understand that future sovereignty will depend on electricity, not only oil, pipelines, minerals, or trade agreements with the United States. That leverage matters because the global economy is becoming more uncertain. Tariffs can return. Trade disputes can return. Industrial policy can become aggressive overnight. Energy imports can become political. Supply chains can be weaponized. When Canada builds reliable electricity at home, it is not just building power plants. It is reducing dependence and preparing for a world where every serious country is trying to secure the industries of the future. Now compare this with what often happens in the global south. Many countries have the raw materials needed for the energy transition: lithium, cobalt, copper, uranium, rare earths, hydropower potential, and solar potential. But without reliable electricity, they cannot fully industrialize around those resources. They export the minerals while someone else refines them, manufactures the technology, controls the patents, and captures the value. That is the old colonial trade pattern wearing a new green costume. Canada's nuclear move offers a different lesson. If you want to capture value, you need energy at home. If you want factories, you need power. If you want technology sovereignty, you need grid sovereignty. If you want to stop being only a supplier in someone else's supply chain, you need the electricity to process, manufacture, and innovate. Still, the central question remains: can Canada actually deliver? Nuclear credibility is not built with announcements. It is built with execution. One major delay can damage confidence, one cost explosion can weaken public support, and one safety controversy can slow everything. That is why Darlington is so important. If Canada builds this first small modular reactor successfully, it can prove the model. If it fails, critics will call SMRs another expensive promise. The stakes are bigger than one reactor. This is about whether Canada can still build major infrastructure, whether it can turn regulation, engineering, labor, capital, and political will into real assets, and whether it can move from debating the future to constructing it. The future economy will not be won by countries with the loudest speeches. It will be won by countries that can keep factories running, data centers powered, workers employed, and value inside their own borders. Reliable electricity is becoming leverage, and leverage decides who builds, who exports, who depends, and who captures the wealth. So when Canada lowers a nuclear foundation 35 meters below ground at Darlington, the world may see a small modular reactor. The deeper story is that Canada is trying to build the power base of the next economy, a permanent battery in spirit, a nuclear engine in reality, and a test of whether reliable electricity may become one of the keys to surviving the next industrial age. Now, I want to hear from you. Is Canada making a smart long-term move, or is nuclear still too risky and expensive? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe to Trad Economics for trade, economics, and geopolitics explained beyond the headlines.